Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Friday edition of Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. I apologize for the slightly delayed start. It was not due to technical difficulties this time. Rather, it was due to having to deal with kids because I was working on a Bible conference that we are going to be having at the end of this month. Very excited about it, trying to make sure it is all ready and prepared. Our 2026 Spring Bible Conference, March 27th through the 29th, addressing doctrinal issues that churches avoid. And so I'm feverishly working. I will tell you, I have some sessions already completed. I will not tell you which ones because then you'll think that there's no way he's going to get done in time. And I think that sometimes too. But somehow, some way, we'll get it done. And so I'm excited about it. The Bible conference, hopefully all of you are able to join us, whether in person or online. We will be live streaming it. And I will be making sure that our technology is working one way or another. We'll make sure that it is recorded. It is live streamed, and you'll be able to watch it. But please come in person. Please, please, please. Pretty please. Because it's a lot of fun. And I want the church to be able to get to see all of you. Those of you who follow the ministry, you've heard the sermons, you've seen the Sunday school classes, the Wednesday night Bible studies. I want the church to be able to meet you and see you and know that there are people out there who know about Blue Baptist Church, and they appreciate that there is a church that teaches a sound doctrine. That's what we're striving to do, be faithful to God's Word, not following after the traditions of men. And so we are going to be continuing our new Sunday school series, which is Identifying the Bible, a textual and historical study. The graphics there maybe look a little bit rough, but that's because I had to minimize it to make it work on our YouTube channel to where you can see it. But yeah, Identifying the Bible. We'll be going into details, starting to talk about the history of the Bible, manuscript, evidence, and all of that. So it'll be a fun time. Of course, we'll be continuing our Sunday sermon series, The War for the Church. How can the church wage war today against the confusion, against the wiles of the devil, when it comes to how involved Satan is today? I'm not one of the biggest proponents. I think that he's the boogeyman behind every problem you have. But there are a lot of lies that he has told over the years, and those lies continue to this day. So how can we wage war, right? How can the church carry out this battle? And I think we do need to have churches that are sound in doctrine. Okay. The title of today's episode. There is a very fascinating thing going on right now. And we've talked about it a little bit here and there, but I want to take today to address it. And then maybe if we have time, I'm going to try to get to a question that I received. There are, let's break it into three groups. You probably could divide it even more, but to simplify it, and I think you can, to be generally accurate, say that there are three really interesting dynamics, schools of thought, theological and political views that we are watching right now being engaged in battle on the world stage. And it's really fascinating. It's almost exciting to me in some ways because theology is coming back to the center of political thought and political focus. Let's talk about Tucker Carlson first, okay? Tucker Carlson is a good, mascot for a school of thought. And Tucker Carlson has articulated the position that basically, the United States should not be aligned with Israel at all, because Israel is I think you'd probably argue, an illegitimate nation, a nation that is hostile to Christianity, a nation that is just seeking to use the United States to fulfill its own purposes. And he did a show yesterday, or he did a show this week. And he basically spent the entire time talking about the theological idea, the doctrinal idea of Israel wanting to rebuild the temple, the third temple, and therefore return back to Torah law, to return to the biblical form of religious practice that you find in the Bible, Genesis through Deuteronomy. He spent a lot of time talking about Chabad. I reference them a lot. We use them a lot as a resource to see what did the rabbis teach about certain passages, how did they approach it. And some affiliated with Chabad who do want to see a return to that Torah Judaism. He argued and made the case that it is against God's will for the third temple to be rebuilt. And that according to Christianity, he's speaking for himself here rather than all of Christianity, but he does represent a good number of Christians, that Jesus is the third temple and the fulfillment of all the Old Testament prophecies. And therefore, all of those passages that you see a temple in the millennial kingdom, and while millennial may not be a term that's found in the Old Testament, which we would want to question that assumption, see if there's something there that we can find, but the very sense of, yes, when the Messiah reigns, there will be a temple. Tucker Carlson, a lot of Christians would say, well, that is all figurative speech and allegory for just Christ. And so therefore, the kingdom is not a kingdom realized in the land of Israel. It's not a temple realized at Temple Mount. Rather, it is Christianity. It's the church. It is maybe the already not yet. There will be a sense in which Christ returns and he reigns. But everything I've heard Tucker Carlson articulate is by no means is he a believer there's really any future for Israel, that Israel will be brought back into the fold at all. And as a result, he's vehemently, very intensely against Judaism, right? Now, he may say that he's not against Judaism, but Tucker Carlson is one of the best in the world about kind of speaking out of both sides of his mouth. So there's Tucker Carlson's position, and it captures the sentiments of a lot within Christianity, especially an increasing number of those on the right. There's the term black-pilled. They are those who have a very negative view of Trump. They would say they are America first in a way that's different than Trump is. They are very much isolationists. They're very much of the idea that we should not have an alliance with Israel at all, that the United States is not carrying out enough deportations. They would take some very, strong positions in that area. And I would understand where they're coming from to some degree. I don't feel that the United States should feel obligated to be beholden to any other country. And I'm not saying that the alliance that the United States has with Israel is the United States are beholden to them. But if the black-pilled position, those, maybe the Thomas Masseys of the world, right, who say the United States we should not be sending our, sons, we should not be sending our daughters. I think it's an absolute atrocity that we would have women in harm's way in the military. But I digress from that we would send our soldiers to die for another country. I can understand that argument. We cannot establish a utopia. We cannot build a democracy everywhere we go. I do not think the imperialist concept of the United States is correct. So I can understand where they're coming from in a lot of those ways, but just understand that is one party here, and that is one group, and they very much have the mentality that it is a major mistake to try to bring to fruition any of the ambitions or goals of Hasidic Judaism, right? Those that believe the third temple needs to be rebuilt, sacrificing the red heifer. And you've heard a lot of talk about that probably in other shows or Bible studies, so on. Okay, there's that group. Now let's talk about the evangelicals. The evangelicals are the ones that Tucker hates the most, probably. As much as Tucker and a lot of these, black-pilled Christian-type groups, if they have a great disdain for Israel and Judaism, they have an even greater disdain for Zionist evangelicalism. So you have the Zionists who believe that, and this is a difficult thing to define, in my opinion, because I hear it used in a lot of ways. I would say, and I believe Dr. White has a short on his YouTube channel talking about what is Zionism, and if I remember, if I'm quoting him correctly, his position is that Zionism is a political movement, and it is not theological in its original conception, but it bleeds over into theology sometimes. That may be a good way to kind of categorize it. So you can go watch Dr. White's short on that. Those of you who do watch Dr. White, by all means, if you would like to give me a clarification on his position, it's been a little bit since I've watched his short, but I would say he has a very good, accurate representation or description of Zionism. But just because there's the term Zionism or Zionist does not mean that's what people think of or what they are referring to when they use that term, because terms can be twisted, terms can be manipulated. So the evangelical Zionists, there's a little bit of a broad category there. There are some who are much more Zionist than others. And there are those who take it in a more political context, probably like we would say, as Dr. White and Ken agrees with me there, that Zionism is a political movement, that there needs to be a nation state for the Jewish people. They have been persecuted greatly as a people. Our black pillar friends would maybe question some of those assumptions and some of the history there, but for right now, let's just entertain the received understanding, right, of history's past. And I think you can really make a decent case, even if you have questions surrounding the 1940s and a mustached man. There's a lot of interesting things on the internet right now. The Spanish Inquisition, I will just tell you from all the available evidence I've found, greatly and heavily targeted the Jewish people, forced conversions and executions and things like that. Or deportations, maybe if you were lucky. So the political idea of many of these evangelicals is, yeah, there needs to be a nation state for Israel. They have suffered greatly. Let them have that land, because it means a lot to them as a people historically, right? In the religion they identify as well as their ethnicity. Once again, Tucker Carlson has hinted at before, as well as others, right? That, well, if you look at their genetics, are they really Jewish, and so on. But just for right now, I'm just explaining the position of the evangelical Zionists. But the evangelical Zionists do not stop at this political position. Many of them do extend this into the theological realm. And there is some variance there how far they take it, but some would say, as a Bible-believing Christian, and this is where I might make some of the black pillars mad, but I can understand an argument and I'd be willing to entertain it. The idea that, hey, as Bible-believing Christians, we don't have a problem with saying, that land is promised to Abraham. So, and Abraham's seed, we're not going to claim it. We as the United States or another nation, we're not going to claim that land for our own. We're not going to plant our flag there and take control of it. That is a very significant land regarding the Bible, regarding the promise God made to Abraham. And so we will choose to leave it vacant. We're not going to mark our territory there. I have no issue with a Christian taking such a position, right? And to a degree that is, once again, where the theological and the political matter bleeds over, because we're saying politically, we're not going to claim that property. And that's based on a theological understanding. So those who have such an opinion, I can tip a hat to and say, yeah, I see where you're coming from. And I think that makes a statement about how you believe and view the Bible. But then we have those who take it too far. And those who say, the nation of Israel today are the people of God. And therefore, we need to bless Israel, and we need to establish them in the land so that God can bring forth His kingdom. That is where I will disagree, because now you are drifting into the realm of soteriology. You are drifting into the issue of the Messiah, the identity of the Christ. Because all of the evangelical Christians are failing to recognize a lot of Old Testament prophecy. We just got done doing a study in Hosea, and I thought it was just so beneficial for us understanding. Israel will not be restored until they acknowledge they have rejected their Messiah. They will not be restored. They will not have a kingdom. So this Christian Zionist view that starts to bring in a blessing for Israel into the fold for being right with God. America will be judged based on how we treat Israel. You are creating some significant problems, because you are implying that there's a way that God is working with Israel that is coinciding with the individual message of salvation, and these two are in conflict with each other, especially because over here, this group you're calling the people of God right now, and who have a special blessing from God, are actively denying their own Messiah. And that is problematic. So, as a Christian, if you want to say out of a biblical principle, let us leave the land vacant, we're not going to claim it, that is for a seed of Abraham, by all means, I think that is, I would even use the word commendable. But if you are jumping into the realm of we must bless Israel because they are the people of God, and so there's this dual requirement of, believe Jesus died for your sins and rose again, but also you need to bless Israel. Now we're preaching a different gospel. Now we're preaching a different message. We're not thinking dispensationally. We're lumping it all together and creating some really serious doctrinal problems. And how we view God working in the world. The United States will be successful and blessed if we bless Israel. And it does lead to the idea of, we can't critique the nation of Israel, right? Because this is how God is carrying out His means of establishing the kingdom. There's just a lot of confusion there. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who they would call themselves a Zionist, hold such doctrine, but a lot of them do. And I would say that interview between Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson is a pretty good representation of that debate, of the really strong anti-Jewish Christian, I guess, and then the Zionist Christian. So both are wrong. Both are wrong in some very significant ways, I would say. We're going to explain how they're wrong here in just a minute. But once again, as I said in the title, they are so wrong, they're almost right. So wrong, they're almost right. Both groups are so wrong, they're almost right. That may not seem like that can exist at the same time, that it's contradictory, but I'm going to try to explain why I think it's the case that no, the truth is those two groups can have a lot right, but also have a lot wrong. And then there's a third group. And that third group, I'm going to just, these are the Jewish people, those of the Jewish religion. What are their thoughts? Their thoughts right now. It's going to be similar probably to the Christian Zionists. Now, you can't lump every person who says they're a Jew into a single category, because Judaism is both an ethnicity. Jewishness is a ethnicity, but can also be a religion. And even within the religion of Judaism, there's some that are very progressive Jews, and a very fundamentalist or conservative Jew would have nothing really in common with these progressive Jews to a very significant degree. Chuck Schumer, right? I believe he is Jewish. And then you have Ben Shapiro, who is Jewish, or Dennis Prager, who is Jewish. They could not disagree more on the matters of marriage, on the matters of abortion, and so on. Even Chuck Schumer, the state of Israel, he's had a lot of critiques. So I am having to be a little bit specific when I refer to the Jewish religion, and I'm talking about Hasidic Jews here. Hasidic Jews, they would be the more fundamentalist Jews that realize until we have the temple, we cannot have Torah. We can have rabbinical Judaism. We can follow the instruction that the rabbis have for us. They'll probably appeal to the Talmud and different writings. But we can't have Genesis through Deuteronomy until we have the temple. We can't carry out Torah without the temple. And I would just say to Tucker, a lot of Christians who are very critical of Judaism, that is foundational to their faith, to their belief, just as the resurrection of Christ is foundational to ours. So the condescending tone that is often found when you do see Christians, but these very intensely anti-Zionist Christians speaking about the building of the third temple, first of all, you're never going to persuade a Jew that way. But also, you seem to not be showing any kind of, I'm trying to think of the term that I want to use, any compassion or real consideration that this is foundational to the faith for them. They don't think they have their Messiah yet. And you can get angry with them and so on, but to a degree, I would say they weren't there. The Jews of today were not the ones that rejected Jesus when he was on earth. Do they reject him now? Yes, but they weren't the ones that were of that particular generation. And so, for the sake of the Jewish people, if we want to win them, scoffing at them and and being very, I would just kind of say nasty towards them for the sentiments that we need a temple so we can have Torah again, is pretty ugly. I think you would not dare, I don't think Tucker would dare show such thoughts towards the Islamic faith if they lost the Dome of the Rock or whatever their other holy sites that they have. So it is foundational to their faith. Now let's talk about them for a minute. Where have they erred? Where has the Jewish religion erred? They erred because the Messiah came and they rejected him. And he fulfilled the prophecies. Maybe they didn't realize that they were prophecies about the Messiah at the time, but he came. He fulfilled prophecies. The lame leaped, the dumb spake. The signs of turning the water into wine, and then of course you have the resurrection itself. They reject that. And that's why you don't have the kingdom today. If you are a Jew today and you wonder why has God allowed us to live 2,000 years, nearly 2,000 years without a temple, why has God allowed us to be scattered throughout the nations like Israel has? And why is it that when we went back to the land in 1948, we haven't seen the restoration yet? Well, you're still in denial and rejection of your Messiah. And until Israel as a nation accepts the Messiah, you're not going to have that kingdom. You're not going to dwell safely in the land. You won't have a proper temple. Now, we can't get into the time, and I said proper there because there are some speculation that, when the temple will be rebuilt and the return of Torah Judaism for a time until the Antichrist comes and carries out the abomination of desolation. So there is a little bit of a wiggle room there, but you won't have Messiah reigning in the temple until you accept him. But where are they right? Where is Hasidic Judaism right? They are right that God has a future for Israel. Okay? Just as the Christian Zionists are right. God has a future for Israel. He has made a covenant with the seed of Abraham. We are not the literal seed of Abraham. Galatians chapter 3 is often used. Folks, Galatians chapter 3 is the chapter that is used. You can't even do it from Romans chapter 4. I just did a teaching on Romans chapter 4. It's available on the website. It may need to be patched, but it's on the website. Galatians 3. And the truth is, the way that Paul speaks about Abraham's seed in Galatians 3, he's talking about Christ. There is an everlasting covenant in the covenant of circumcision that concerns the land. Hasidic Jews know that. Christian Zionists, whether they are able to really articulate that well or not, they know that. They see that. Tucker and the black-pilled Christians who have they do not account at all for any future for Israel. That is completely lost on them. And they have decided that we are the fulfillment of the new covenant. We are the true Israel. They would probably use that terminology. Tucker may have a replacement theology view. I'm not really sure. I don't know how much he's thought about it. He and others like him would say that Christ is the third temple. Now, that very interestingly, if you look in the King James Bible, you look up third and temple, you don't see it. So the line or statement that Christ is there's four statements in the New King James, but even that, it doesn't say that's the third temple. It's talking about a third of the temple, or it was the third day of the month. Maybe you can argue let's see. You have the prophecy of Matthew, right? That this temple will be destroyed in 3 days, I will raise it up, but he was talking about himself. I am trying really hard to find this doctrine that Jesus is the fulfillment of the third temple prophecies. When you're here in Acts, it's just the temple. Sometimes the temple of Zeus, sometimes the temple of Aphrodite or Diana. Maybe when we get into the rest of the passages. You got 1 Corinthians 3:16. Do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? That can be taken in a lot of different ways, depending on the audience of 1 Corinthians, who that really should be to, but it's not talking about Jesus. Rather, your body is the temple in that particular context. Is that fulfillment of Ezekiel's prophecy? Don't be so fast. And from there, that's it. That's it. I mean, the rest of it is just the temple in heaven, so on. So those who would say, well, Jesus is the third temple, you're building a theology out of a paper tiger. It's not going to hold up. It may sound really spiritual, but you basically have zero ground to stand on that Jesus is the third temple. You honestly, it'd be better argued that we're the third temple than Jesus is the third temple. Furthermore, I can show you verse after verse after verse of a prophetic future temple, whether it's in the Old Testament or the New, in the prophets or in the epistles, the book of Revelation. So you've got to understand, right, the Tucker Carlsons of the world, those who think theologically like he does. The Hasidic Jews and Christian Zionists are absolutely correct that there will be another temple. Now, that doesn't mean it's our job to build it. That's where I would disagree with the Christian Zionists. And for the Jews today, my message is God's not doing that right now, and you should be trying to build a temple. You need to acknowledge your Messiah. And right now, the way that they have a path to God is just by believing in Him. By grace through faith, not of works. You don't have the temple right now. You don't have Torah. What can you do? Believe in the Lord Jesus and you'll be saved. Today's the day of salvation. And this is where it's funny, because here, even though they may not get the gospel right, I don't know how much works may be fitting into some of the black pillars, Tucker Carlson and so on. I don't know if I've heard him. I haven't watched him enough to hear his clear presentation on the gospel. But I'm just going to assume he's right on this. He is right that building a temple, re-implementing, reinstituting Torah is not going to get you anywhere with God today. It's not going to get you blessings. You're not going to be saved by building the temple and engaging in biblical law. It is entirely by grace through faith. So this is where all of this dynamic is very frustrating if you're a right divider, because you've got all these groups shouting and yelling at each other. The Zionists are yelling at the Christian covenant or replacement theologians. The covenant replacement theologians, I'm using that as the Tucker Carlson technical term, are yelling at the other two. And the Zionists and the Hasidic Jews, their main hiccup is the Hasidic Jews don't recognize Jesus as their Messiah. And so therefore, it's a very frustrating thing, and they are the ones who are getting to have the debate. Meanwhile, I feel like I am over here waving my arms. Hey, I would like to get in on this conversation because I've actually got some things to say that may surprise you, because you're right and you're right and you're right, but also you're wrong and you're wrong. You're two sides of the same coin. You are making some proper and accurate observations to some degree, right? Tucker Carlson, in that God is not dealing with Israel today as he will in prophetic future. The Zionists are right in the sense of there's a future for Israel. Absolutely, yes, Jesus is the Messiah, but there's a future for Israel. And the Hasidic Jews are right in that God will deliver his promises to us, and there will need to be a third temple. They're all right in their own way, and yet they're all wrong, because they're missing, in the case of the Hasidic Jews, they're missing Jesus as Messiah. In the case of the Zionists, the Christian Zionist, in that very strong theological sense, not the political sense. So that's where the terminology is difficult. So please forgive me if I've been using the term and you're thinking he's not using it correctly. I'm using it as Tucker Carlson and others have used it. They're wrong too. And absolutely Tucker Carlson's wrong in his observation, the covenant replacement theologians. And so it's very frustrating for all of us, those of you who do watch and you listen and you engage with all the political conversation. At the same time, it does make you a little bit hopeful. It maybe gives you a little bit of excitement, because theology is at the heart of this matter, and who is the one? It's really kind of neat. There's a lot of things I don't have the answer to, okay? I'm not saying that I have special knowledge or insight that others don't have about a lot of things in life. Here is one area that I do feel confident. I do feel really confident in, that we have got something figured out that people just are missing out on. And it's true like that for a lot of people. There was a time when everybody was convinced that margarine was better. Eat margarine. Don't eat real butter. Don't eat those eggs. They raise your cholesterol. There was a time when that was the consensus, and everybody just went along with it. And you were crazy and you were the minority if you said, no, you shouldn't be eating that fake food. Eat real butter, eat real eggs. That's where we are. We are the eat real food people, okay? We are a minority right now who are ahead of the curve for everybody else. I am hopeful. I've got a lot of friends who I've tried to share Right Division with, and they're not there. I hope that they'll eventually come along and they'll realize, when the Reformation started, that was great, but we stopped along the way and we need to keep reforming. We are just the earliest, or we're the latest generation of the reformers, right? We are highly reformed. We are so reformed that we're not Calvinist. That's how reformed we are. We're more reformed than the Calvinists are. Always like to use that line. And therefore, we have the proper theological solution, and really the proper theological solution to a lot of political problems as well. We're not going to go forth to conquer for them, but that land is promised. As a country, I think we acknowledge it and we leave it alone, right? Leave it alone. That's for a people. Now, is that people here today? Is it this generation? I don't know. That's God. God knows that. But we'll leave it reserved. In the meantime, though, here's the age of grace. So it's really interesting times as we look at this very fascinating situation in which they're so wrong. Tucker Carlson, you are so wrong. The Christian Zionists are so wrong in a lot of ways. The Hasidic Jews are so wrong in a lot of ways. But at the same time, they're almost right. They're almost there. They're just missing a mystery. There's a little piece of the puzzle that they haven't put together, and that is the mystery. And if they could figure that out, we'd be in a lot better shape. And maybe some of this political confusion would go away. Okay. Now let's go ahead and look at a question here from our good friend Kristen. I got to scroll down here and find her question down here. I hope that I can... Here it is. So she says, so I was listening to a podcast that I usually enjoy yesterday, and he played a clip from a sermon on Sunday concerning the current events going on. I do not know very much about all of the prophecy in the Bible other than what I've studied in Revelation as a teenager because I always found it very interesting. But most of the rest of it I don't even claim to understand, so I am curious about your thoughts on this topic. Okay, first of all, you've probably read more Revelation than a lot of Christians. Most Christians don't even pick it up. So good job, Kristen. All right, here's our question. Everything that he said made sense in the context of what he was saying, but the translation he was reading was very clearly not KJV. But basically he said that this particular situation is fulfilling God's promise to Persia that he would not forget the way they helped his people. Daniel 10 was the passage he referenced. I did read it last night several times, but I am not completely clear on what I actually read. Okay, so the argument is what the United States is doing today is the fulfillment of prophecy concerning Persia for what they have done for his people. So Daniel chapter 10, let's see. I'm going to jump down here. Very famous passage here. Okay, let's just start here. And behold, an hand touched me, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto thee, and stand upright. For unto thee I am now sent. And when he spoke this word unto me, I stood trembling. Then he said unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I am come to take thee, understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days. Very, very famous passage there about this angelic battle between the prince of Persia and this angel, and Michael coming to help him. So let's listen to the prophecy that's going to be given here in Daniel chapter 10 from this angel. And when he spake such words unto me, I set my face toward the ground, and I became dumb. And behold, one like the similitude of the sons of men touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spake, and said unto him that stood before me, O my Lord, by the vision my sorrows are turned upon me, and I have retained no strength. Let's see. Let's just read verse 19, I guess. Or let's read verse 18. Then there came again and touched me one like the appearance of a man, and he strengthened me, and said, O man greatly beloved, fear not, peace be unto thee, be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. Then said he, Knowest thou wherefore I come unto thee? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. But I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me in these things, but Michael your prince. Continues on, chapter 11. Also I in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength through his riches he shall stir up against all them the realm of Grecia. And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. I'm trying to see where it comes in, a blessing for Persia for what they did. Granted, Artaxerxes did give Israel the Jews permission to return to the land to rebuild the city of Jerusalem and then to rebuild the temple. I would like to find the exact passage Oh, I didn't realize I had New King James on here instead of King James. I was doing an investigation on something, that's why I had New King James. But if we look at Persia in these prophetic passages, it's a tough one because you do have a lot of references to Persia here. That's really the end of it right there. I suppose I would have to investigate a little bit more. I don't quite know how Daniel 10 fits into a blessing for Persia. I feel like there is a statement, though, potentially about that, the fact that Artaxerxes did allow them to return and rebuild. But what I am going to say, I think the answer that's quite easy is just the fact that that is prophetic, and we are not in the prophetic age. The problem with what that preacher said is that is assuming that there's deliverance for Iran, which are Persians. Originally they were Persians. Assuming it all goes well, okay, that's great. Maybe it doesn't go well. Maybe they can establish a kind regime, a kind form of government that will be good to the Persian people in Iran. And so now you're kind of placing all that on the shoulders of God to see it out. And maybe God hasn't promised to do anything with Persia at this time, Iran at this time. I think that we are not in the prophetic age. We are in the mystery age, and and this preacher's mixing the two of those together. So any speculation about what may happen with Iran, trying to argue it from the scriptures, is absolutely going to lead to some great confusion and may not reflect the Bible well. That's why you need to be careful about invoking God, saying God is doing this. Because what if He isn't and it fails? You've given the critics ammunition, and you spoke in ignorance. So I would disagree with that preacher. It may sound really good, but just because it sounds really good and he has a little bit of scripture that kind of makes it sound like it ties in and fits doesn't mean it's true. Those are my thoughts. Okay, let's see here. We're getting ready to wrap up today's show. We got Ken with us. Great to have you, Ken, and Paul, Myra. We have Rick with us, Mary. Let's see here. We got Sydney with us. Great to have you, Sydney. Appreciate all of you who took the time to watch today's show. It really does mean a lot. Hopefully you found it to be worth your while, and maybe it gives you some thoughts, especially on all of the political conversation that's going on right now. And maybe we can get down to the truth here. But I'm going to have to talk to Nathan about getting this fixed. We do have Romans chapter 4 here, but my website is still a little bit broken. So maybe Nathan can get all that fixed for me. I don't know how that works. It's like strange magic to me. I am not a computer genius. I'm not any kind of genius. I'm just somebody who tries to take the Bible literally, take it for what it says. Once again, we'll be having our second session on our Sunday School series, Identifying the Bible, a Textual and Historical Study. I've got a lot of work to do, folks. We've got a Bible conference coming up. I've got a lot of prep. I've got a lot of work to do. I've been up already for about, 5 hours. Actually, a little bit longer than that. So, yeah. I'm like 6 now. 6 hours I've been up. So appreciate all of you. Have a good rest of your day. If you have any questions about the conference or just anything in general, you can always reach out to me, markdbaze@gmail.com. And this has been Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. We are willing to have the hard conversations, ask the hard questions. This is what I try to do. Hopefully we are faithful to sound doctrine. Boy, there's a lot of confusion out there. So many sides who have a little bit of truth, but a whole lot of incorrect thinking. And so hopefully we can share the truth of sound doctrine in God's Word and straighten these people out. This has been Shields and Arrows. Thank you all so much. Have a good weekend. We'll see you Sunday.